Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lim. Namaskar. Coming up on News Hour. US President Trump's 25% tariffs on Mexican and Canadian imports and 20% on Chinese imports take effect. Over $1.3 trillion of annual trade to be hit. US pauses all military aid to Ukraine. House Democrats denounced the decision, saying it gives Russia an open door to escalate aggression. Egypt to hold an emergency Arab summit in Cairo to discuss the second phase of Gaza ceasefire and the future of a Palestinian state. And the Champions Trophy semi-final between India and Australia doesn't get any bigger as cricket's top two teams look to knock each other out. The US will press ahead with steep tariffs on Canada and Mexico on Tuesday, Donald Trump has said, setting the stage for a trade war with his country's two largest economic partners and also severe retaliatory measures. We get you a detailed report.
The gloves are off. After days of speculation in the US and hope across its northern and southern borders, US President Donald Trump is going ahead with his decision to impose sweeping 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada with effect from Tuesday, March 4th.
Tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs.
The tariffs from China will also be levied from 4th March. However, in a show of defiance, Trump has doubled the rate from 10% announced initially to 20%. The tariffs are scheduled to take effect on Tuesday. Trump had initially planned to impose the tariffs at the beginning of February but delayed the move after Canada and Mexico agreed to take certain steps on border control. All three nations have threatened countermeasures.
Comunicación permanente.
Whatever their decision is, we will also make our decisions, and there is a plan and there is unity in Mexico. That strengthens us a lot.
Y vamos a esperar qué pasa.
Canada announced retaliatory tariffs in a statement from Prime Minister's office. Canada said it will start with 25% tariffs on US imports worth 30 billion Canadian dollars from Tuesday, and thereafter an additional $125 billion worth in 21 days. It added that Canada's tariffs will remain in place until the US trade action is withdrawn, and if it is not withdrawn, provinces and territories will pursue several non-tariff measures. China has already announced tariffs on energy imports from the US. After the latest salvo by Washington, further retaliation is anticipated. Trump administration has imposed sweeping tariffs to boost home manufacturing that may or may not happen in the long term. But the short-term effects are already being felt in the way the decision has sent stock markets into a tailspin. After initial jitters, no one wants to hazard a guess for how long it will take to calm the aftershocks. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, the US President Donald Trump has signed an order imposing tariffs on Canada, Mexico and China, shutting down hopes of a last-minute deal. But the tariffs ranging from 20% to 25% are expected to drive up prices for businesses and consumers, potentially impacting the American economy and global trade dynamics. Here's a report.
As Trump's tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China start Tuesday, economists and experts warn that these levies will lead to higher consumer prices, slower economic growth, and reduced employment opportunities in US itself. US President Donald Trump's sweeping duties, particularly on Canada and Mexico, are set to snarl supply chains for key sectors like automobiles and construction materials, risking cost increases to households. Experts now estimate that these tariffs would cut US economic output by 0.1% each, even before considering potential foreign retaliation. Some even believe that US tariffs could reach their highest levels since 1936.
We could easily reach the highest effective tariff rate since 1936 by the beginning of 2026 if these are to be continued. In terms of the demand and the supply side effects, these are so large and so different, and they stack on top of each other. So there's a 25% tariff on steel, and then there's another 25% tariff on top of it for steel coming in from Canada. That's a lot. And all of that can't be passed on to consumers, even though historically most of the cost of tariffs was passed on to consumers. At some point in time, you've got the manufacturers actually bearing the cost as well.
The automobile sector in particular is likely to face headwinds. Trump's tariffs announcement sent shockwaves through Windsor, Ontario in Canada, which is home to more than 250,000 people and is a hub of Canada's auto industry. Residents feel betrayed as fears of closures of factories mount.
You see over 3,000 people in here, and currently all 3,000 of those people's jobs are up in the air and left at the fate of Donald Trump and his tariffs.
I don't know if Donald Trump understands that what it'll do in the United States. I know he's been told, but he is playing with people's livelihoods. He's playing with my members' livelihoods.
While the markets are already reacting negatively to the levies, it may be a while before the full impact is visible to the entire economy, and possible countermeasures from Mexico, Canada, and China may add to the misery on both sides of the border. Bureau Report, TD India.
Well, the next in line for tariffs from Trump are those on steel and aluminium imports globally, which are set to start from March 12. With confirmation of the imposition of tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China from Tuesday, countries that will be affected from the March 12 decision have started reacting as well. South Korea's acting president, Choi Sang-mok, said on Tuesday that the government, parliament, and the private sector should be united to respond to the United States trade war. During a cabinet meeting, Choi also said that South Korea and the United States had agreed to form a consultative group to discuss tariff measures and cooperation on shipbuilding. The US-Korea Free Trade Agreement, or FTA, allows most goods to be traded without tariffs. And China has hit back at fresh US tariffs, imposing 10% to 15% hikes on American agricultural and food imports, escalating trade tensions between the world's top two economies. Beijing also placed 25 US firms under export and investment restrictions on national security grounds, including 10 companies targeted for arms sales to Taiwan. The move comes as an additional 10% duty was imposed by the US President Donald Trump that took effect, bringing total tariffs to 20% on China in response to what Washington calls Chinese inaction over drug flows. Still with the United States, the US President Trump has suggested that a deal allowing US investments in Ukraine's minerals could still happen despite tensions with Kiev. This comes as European leaders have proposed a truce in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The Trump administration sees this deal as a way for the United States to earn back some of the billions of dollars given in aid to Ukraine. However, a recent Oval Office clash between Trump and the Ukrainian President Zelensky has put the potential deal in doubt. Responding to a question on Monday, Trump hinted that the deal is not dead, describing it as a great deal for America. Further, he said that he would give an update on the situation on Tuesday night, also adding that Zelensky should be more appreciative of Washington's support.
What do you need to see from President Zelensky to restart these negotiations?
Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border.
Since taking office in January, Trump has upended the U.S. policy on Ukraine and Russia, adopting a more conciliatory approach with Moscow, leaving Ukraine and European allies wary. In another development, the U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered a pause on U.S. military aid to Ukraine on Monday, following a tense Oval Office meeting aiming to push Ukrainian President Zelensky towards peace talks with Russia. The White House has announced a review and temporary pause on aid to ensure it supports a peaceful resolution. The pause has gone into effect immediately and impacts hundreds of millions of dollars of weaponry in the process of being sent to Ukraine. All U.S. military equipment not yet in Ukraine would be halted, including weapons en route by air or sea and those held in transit areas in Poland. Trump directed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to implement the pause. U.S. assistance to Ukraine includes military aid, budgetary assistance, largely delivered through a World Bank trust fund, and other funds that had been delivered through the U.S. Agency for International Development, which has been throttled by the Trump White House. And in an evening address, the Ukrainian President Zelensky stressed that true peace can only be achieved with solid security guarantees. He urged for proper diplomacy to swiftly end the three-year conflict with Russia.
We are working through all possible scenarios to protect Ukraine. The primary scenario is to maintain our positions and create conditions for proper diplomacy, ensuring that this war ends as soon as possible with decent peace. We need peace, real fair peace, not an endless war, and we need security guarantees.
Ukraine's parliament said on Monday that the country's security was ensured by support from the United States and described President Donald Trump's peacekeeping efforts as decisive in efforts to end the three-year-old conflict with Russia. A statement issued by the Ukrainian parliament said that Washington's support was more crucial than ever for the Ukrainian people. Urging swift action, the parliament stressed that no one desires peace more than Ukraine itself. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. Protests in Bangladesh over Home Affairs advisor's remarks allegedly justifying an attack on two women in Dhaka. Japan's worst wildfire in decades continues to burn. SpaceX scrubs Starship test flight, delaying Starlink simulator launch. Europe's Ariane 6 rocket also postponed. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. The Arab League members are going to meet in Cairo on Tuesday to counter the U.S. president's threats to take over Gaza and move its residents. The summit, convened by Egypt, aims to formulate a unified Arab stance on the Palestinian issue and to present an Arab counter-proposal to the United States' plans for the displacement of the Gaza population. Now, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will also join this Arab emergency meeting. The Arab foreign ministers met in the Egyptian capital on Monday for a closed-door preparatory session which centered on a plan to rebuild the territory without displacing its people. The plan will be presented to Arab leaders on Tuesday's summit. This is for approval. Also, the Arab League summit on the territory's reconstruction comes a day after the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu again has given his backing to Trump's plan, calling it a visionary plan and an innovative plan. The US President Donald Trump had last month proposed to take over Gaza and to resettle its population to develop it into a tourist destination, an idea vehemently rejected by the Arab world and many other countries as well. And my colleague Amit Mukherjee has been following this story. He joins us from the newsroom. Amit, is there enough unity in the Arab League, to present the United States with a viable alternative to the Trump plan for Gaza?
Well, Mark, very interesting situation. If you look at this meeting, in fact, this is not the first meeting of the Arab world. In fact, the last meeting had happened on the 21st of February, where all the leaders of the Arab world had gathered at Riyadh. It was a meeting which was convened by the crown, the king of Saudi Arabia. But it actually turned out to be a very, very inconclusive sort of a meeting, and nobody commented on it as to what was the outcome of it. Now, when approached Sheikh Zayed, who is the chairman of United Arab Emirates, he said it was a very fruitful meeting, but he never spelled out what came out of that meeting. So it was very clear. In fact, if sources are to be believed, people who were close to that development, they they pointed out the two main issues, which are actually, the main bone of contention out there is to, whenever the rebuilding of Gaza happens, who is going to control Gaza from the Arab world at that point in time, and what would be the kind of, what would be the modalities of the funding that would flow in the redevelopment of Gaza. And now again, this current meeting, again, it's an emergency meeting that has been called by the Arab world. In fact, last weekend we saw Trump coming up with, again, he kind of reiterated his plan to take over Gaza, and in fact he came up with AI generated images of Gaza, how the future Gaza would look like, sprawling malls, markets, and very elaborate beaches. It's more of a Las Vegas model that he is looking at. So now that has kind of again agitated, or if that has triggered a lot of panic among the Arab world, which is why this meeting is happening. So as far as the unity is concerned, coming back to your question, Mark, yes, no, there is no unity as to the basics, as far as rebuilding of Gaza is concerned, whether it's who's going to control that territory or how would the financing to rebuild Gaza would happen. Mark?
Indeed, and talking about who's going to control, has the real negotiating position of Hamas weakened after the elimination of Hania and Sinwar?
Well, absolutely. If you look at the history, if I just talk about Yahya Ibrahim Sinwar, he was a highly motivated guy. He spent about 22 years in the Israeli prisons, and his release was actually secured in a similar sort of a prisoner swap in 2011. When Shilad Galid, one of the soldiers who was abducted by Hamas around 2009, his release was secured against 1,000 Israeli prisoners, and that number also included Yahya Sinwar. And he was not only a motivated guy, he was a master strategist, and he utilized the entire network of Gaza to plan what happened a year back, that the 7 October attack, which happened in 2023, where Israelis were abducted and taken away to Gaza, that was entirely designed and planned by Yahya Sinwar. So, and if you look at the whole thing, it was 1 year, and the kind of network, Gaza is a very limited space, but the way Sinwar utilized and planned the whole operation, Israelis couldn't get back their hostages even after a year. That shows the kind of meticulous planning and the mastermind, strokes which Sinwar had played when it came to orchestrating the October 7, 2023 attack on Israel. Mark?
Yeah, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Amit Mukherjee, for joining us with those inputs and the background. Now, let's move on to our next story. In fact, it is a similar story related. Israeli forces have carried out airstrikes on a military site in Kard-Aha, which is northwest Syria's Latakia province. They targeted arms stored by previous Syrian government. Syrian sources have reported that the strikes on the 3 former Syrian army assets, a radar station, a weapons depot and a berth near the Mediterranean port of Tartus. The state news agency Sana has confirmed these strikes have taken place near Tartus, stating that there were no casualties. SpaceX on Monday called off its 8th Starship test flight just before its scheduled launch from its Starbase facility in Boca Chica, which is in Texas, due to an unspecified technical issue. While in Europe, the first commercially operated launch of Europe's Ariane 6 heavy rocket was also postponed for a second time on Monday. Let's look at this report.
When nothing seems to be working in unison for the US and its European allies on the ground, 2 different events concerning space were postponed at the last minute due to a technical snag. In the US, Elon Musk, SpaceX, called off its 8th Starship test flight over an unspecified issue on the rocket system's core chip. It delayed for at least 24 hours the attempt to deploy mock Starlink satellites in the space for the first time. SpaceX posted on social media platform X saying that standing down from today's flight test attempt, Starship team is determining the next best available opportunity to fly. SpaceX spokesperson Dan Dwart said company could try to launch the world's biggest and the most powerful rocket again on Tuesday. In some way, the eagerness of Europe to launch satellites on its own rocket stems from the recent fissures in the US skies. Ariane 6 was due to launch French military satellites. The Ariane 6 launch was called off due to an anomaly on the ground just minutes before its scheduled launch.
You will certainly remember that at a certain point in 2023, Ukraine was relying on the services of constellation of American satellites, namely the Starlink constellation of the company SpaceX, whose boss is Elon Musk. And you will recall that at one point, Starlink services were suspended because the boss of Starlink felt that the Ukrainians' use of these satellites was not going in the direction he wanted. So we can clearly see Ukraine being placed in a position of weakness and dependence on Starlink. For a country like France, this is completely unacceptable.
Europe's newest uncrewed rocket had staged a partially successful inaugural flight on July 9th last year, carrying out a series of trials but leaving its upper stage in orbit after a software glitch that officials later described as fixable. Bureau Report, DD India.
Protests erupted in Bangladesh on Monday as demonstrators burnt an effigy of the Home Affairs advisor Jahangir Alam Chowdhury, demanding his resignation over remarks allegedly justifying an attack on 2 women in Dhaka. On March 1, 2 women were reportedly attacked by a mob in Dhaka's Lalmatia area. One of the victims alleged that they were attacked for smoking. Outrage has spread across social media condemning the attack. Last week, in fact, Dhaka University students had also staged protests demanding an immediate resignation of the Home Advisor, accusing him of failing to control rising crime. Indonesia is set to launch over 20 energy projects worth $40 billion this year to boost domestic refining capacity. The Indonesian Energy Minister Bahlil Lahadalia has announced these plans to use coal to develop an alternative cooking fuel in order to reduce reliance on imports. The President, Prabowo Subianto, has pledged, in fact, to phase out coal power within 15 years and also to achieve net zero emissions by mid-century. In Thailand's northeastern province of Nakhon Ratchasima, an unexpected and severe drought is unfolding, pushing water reserves to dangerously low levels. Regional governor has ordered urgent action across all 32 districts, focusing on securing water supplies, managing agricultural use and preserving waterways. Farmers have been urged to abandon off-season rice cultivation and switch to less water-intensive crops. With rainfall far below average, the province faces a tough battle ahead. Japan is fighting a forest fire that has damaged dozens of homes and forced hundreds of residents to evacuate in the northeastern coastal city. Now, Japan, in fact, is battling its biggest forest fire in 3 decades, which has caused authorities to issue an evacuation advisory to some 4,600 residents. One person died in the blaze in the northern region of Iwate, which follows record low rainfall in the area and also last year's hottest summer on record across Japan. As climate change pushes up temperatures worldwide, more than 2,000 troops and firefighters have been deployed from across the country. China's first extended reality experience center for Emperor Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. It has opened in Xi'an. This is a place there offering visitors a journey into ancient Chinese history. The visitors, what they can do is explore a meticulously recreated landscape of the Emperor Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. It's brought back to life, in fact, using the latest archaeological findings and cutting-edge technology. The wearable devices and state-of-the-art virtual reality enables the visitors to ride war horses and also to explore ancient tomb passages. It, in addition, gives them that thrill, the time travel thrill, that kind of adventure. The Experience Center will also unveil China's first immersive VR experience on the Red Army's Long March. So, interesting developments for the Chinese. The 16th Jumbo Majumdar International Seminar. It was held at the Air Force Auditorium in New Delhi on Tuesday. This seminar was organized by the Center for Air Power Studies. It's themed on evolving dynamics of aerospace power. It was inaugurated by the Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh, and the seminar has aimed at attracting the attention of different stakeholders of the defense ecosystem. So discussions are covering AI and aerospace management, also cyber and electronic warfare, space-based strategies and advanced fighter aircraft. The Air Chief Marshals also launched 3 books on the occasion.
The management of airspace, along with the unmanned vehicles, low-flying helicopters and so on in urban areas is going to be a big challenge. It is going to be a little beyond normal human capabilities to organize this airspace in urban areas during peacetime. Here is where AI-based technologies need to come in quickly to carry out airspace management.
Let's take a look now at other stories making news around the world. Australia's Workplace Gender Equality Agency's report has found that the gender pay gap in the country is in favour of male workers, with findings based on the country's finance, mining and construction industries data. The median gender pay gap for 2024 was 18.6% in favour of men. Following a 185-year-old tradition in Bonfim, Brazilians celebrate horseback carnival wearing traditional and embroidered costumes. The tradition is an amalgamation of local Moorish as well as Christian cultures, in fact carried out through generations in this Bonfim. Marking the end of the carnival season and the beginning of the 40-day Lent period, residents in the Greek seaside town of Galaxidi, they played with coloured flour. It's known as the Flower War. And this event attracts thousands of people, both participants and revelers alike. Similar to Holi in some way. Now, Ecuador has signed a 20-year contract with a Chinese-Canadian joint venture led by Sinopec and New Stratus Energy to work on the Sasha oil field. This move aims to modernize the country's most significant oil field while working to increase its daily production. Still to come here on DD India News Hour, we're going to get your expert opinion on trade wars as the US tariffs on Canada, Mexico and China take effect. PM Modi addresses post-budget webinar. He says that the MSMEs have played an important transformative role in economic growth. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Global stocks have been plunging, bond yields have been tumbling, and currencies are fluctuating as the United States has enacted new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. Investors are fearing a worsening trade war. Markets across Asia and beyond are feeling the impact. Here's a report.
A colossal wave of sweeping U.S. tariffs have triggered a tsunami in world financial markets. Markets across the globe have literally hit the panic button. In Asia, stocks opened sharply lower, mirroring the biggest losses on Wall Street this year. Japan's Nikkei nosedived to 2.2%, Taiwan's benchmark fell 1.3%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng dropped 1.8%, with technology stocks the hardest hit. The global sell-off follows a steep decline in the US, where the S&P 500 slid 1.8%, the Dow Jones dropped 649 points, and Nasdaq plunged 2.6%. Currency markets also reacted sharply. The Canadian dollar and Mexican peso weakened, while China's yuan hit its lowest level since February 13th before rebounding. Indian markets also followed the global trend. The Nifty 50 opened below 22,000, plunging to a 9-month low. Mid-cap and small-cap stocks suffered steep losses. Investors fear further volatility as global economic uncertainty deepens. The threat of counter tariffs and its domino effect on other markets and sectors are keeping the investors jittery. Trump announced tariffs in a flash, but the rumblings of the decision might be felt for many weeks. Harshita Oberoi, DD India.
And Dr. Rajat Kathuria, senior economist, will help us understand what's going on. Dr. Kathuria, how much disruption, is likely from these tariffs? We seem to have lost our link with Dr. Rajat Kathuria. We're going to re-establish that in just a moment. I'm told he is on the line with us. Dr. Rajat Kathuria, can you hear me? Dr. Rajat Kathuria is an expert on international trade and is now currently with the Shiv Nadar University, and he has an expertise in geoeconomics, has long been involved with international economic relations, continues to be a visiting professor at ICRIA and had also headed ICRIA for a long time. Dr. Kathuria will be giving us his views on how this trade war is emerging as a result of the U.S.'s imposition of tariffs on its neighbors, especially Canada and Mexico. The U.S. president wants them to start producing within the United States. Whether that's possible, we'll try and find out. And also the tariffs on China, how they're going to affect global supply chains. Dr. Kathuria is with us. Dr. Kathuria, how much of a disruption is likely from these tariffs?
Oh, I think in the short term, the disruption is going to be massive because the countries on which President Trump is imposing the tariffs are likely to retaliate, because these countries are countries that have a deep relationship with the United States. So there is both gains to the United States and there will be gains to the other countries because of the deep relationship from tariff wars, in the sense that they will impose tariffs, there will be retaliatory tariffs. And I think retaliatory tariffs would mean that uncertainty across the world will increase, because these countries are then linked to other countries as well. China is linked to so many other countries.
Absolutely.
Global value chain. So the disruptions in the short term, before they stabilize, I think are going to be enormous.
Also, Dr. Kathuria, what's the potential revenue then for the United States in the medium term? Is it going to offset some of the debt, and will it encourage this trend to continue?
No, I don't think the rationale for levying of the tariffs is revenue for the United States, although it will generate, I don't have an estimate immediately of the kind of revenue that it will generate, but I think the rationale...
Well, the trade that's being hit is about $1.3 trillion for the year. So right. At 25% of that, you can just say on an average.
But if there are retaliatory tariffs by other countries, I don't know whether this amount will be realized, because there will be substitution effect, there will be trade diversion. What was being imported from these countries may be diverted to other countries. So I think while the estimate may be $1 trillion plus, what will ultimately be realized by the United States could be lesser than that, because it needs to accommodate the retaliation and the trade diversion effects of these tariffs. And we don't know that. But I think the primary intention is not revenue generation. The primary intention is to look at the trade deficits of the United States and encourage, as you were saying in your report as well, to have more production in the United States as a part of that package that President Trump is calling Making America Great Again, to reshore a lot of manufacturing to happen in the United States.
Dr. Kathuria, will the tariffs on China impact the supply chain to India?
Of course, they will. I mean, this is both an opportunity and a problem for India. The opportunity for India because of these tariffs is, so some amount of trade could be diverted to India. The question is whether India is ready to benefit from the trade diversion that happens from China to India or to other countries. And my sense is that, while we can benefit at the margin from some of the tariffs that are imposed on China, we'll need to scale up a lot, because remember, China exports huge amounts, $300-400 billion to the United States, and therefore to be able to absorb even a part of that export to the United States would require us to scale up. So therein lies the opportunity for India. But the cost to India is going to be as a result of the flooding in India of the trade that is diverted from the United States into India. So there could be there could be exports to the United States that could find their way to India at cheaper rates. So there's likely to be an impact on the dumping of Chinese products in India. Dumping I'm using in a loose way. Dumping of Chinese products in India, and at the same time the opportunity for Indian exports to the United States to go up. But then that will have to contend with the fact that that United States is also planning to impose tariffs on India beginning April.
Okay, fair enough. But once it looks like everyone is going to be starting to raise tariffs across the world. So once a new tariff regime kicks in, with all countries raising or reducing tariffs, what impact will it have on prices in emerging markets? Because we are seeing the markets not able to react right now. I'm talking about stock markets, but also generally prices.
So generally prices, there will be an impact on inflation. And as a result of these tariff wars, there is likely to be creeping inflation. It will actually depend on the suppliers. Some of the suppliers may absorb some of the price hikes. Some of it may be passed on to the consumers. So it will vary by product, to the extent that there is big demand for, or the elasticity of demand is low, then the prices may be passed on to the consumers. To the extent that the elasticity of demand, or if there's not sufficient demand, some of those prices will be absorbed by the producers themselves. So it depends on how much of that price is going to be absorbed at the wholesale, at the retail level, and how much of it is going to be absorbed by the suppliers themselves. Regardless, I think there's going to be an impact on inflation. There's going to be creeping inflation, unless a lot of this trade gets diverted towards bilateral trade agreements where a lot of duty-free imports happen as a result of countries having bilateral agreements amongst themselves. But I think that effect will be marginal. So to that extent, I think there will be a sort of impact on inflation over time that we will feel, because there will be retaliatory tariffs by most countries that United States trades with. Trade is, my perception of what fair trade is very different from somebody else's perception of what free trade is. So if United States feels that it's being unfairly treated, China could also feel that it's being unfairly treated by the United States. Because there is a process now that has been established in global trading process, which is the WTO. And you cannot unilaterally begin to impose these tariffs.
A final word, a quick word in, Dr. Kathuria, you did mention that the US really wants to try and balance its trade. But, its consumption is much higher than its production. And the dollar value is pretty high, as we know. It's making their goods expensive. So is this even possible?
It's not. I mean, they will begin to feel the effect very soon, because as a result, as you know, anybody who has visited the United States would know that most of the products that are sold, to the common person, to the average person, middle class person, most of those products are made in China. Be it textiles, be it footwear, be it toys, even groceries nowadays, you will see a lot of them that have been sourced from China. And to that extent, those prices will begin to be impacted. It will begin to impact the consumer wallet sooner than later. And I think there will have to be some then intervention by the United States to be able to manage that process of increase in inflation in the United States. So I don't think this will play out to the extreme as it has been planned, but these are, negotiating strategies to garner.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajat Kathuria, senior economist. Thank you for joining us and helping us understand the tariff wars. Now, moving on, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today congratulated Christian Stocker on being sworn in as the Federal Chancellor of Austria. In a post on social media platform X, the Prime Minister wrote, "Warmly congratulate His Excellency Christian Stocker on being sworn in as the Federal Chancellor of Austria. The India-Austria enhanced partnership is poised to make steady progress in the years to come. I look forward to working with you to take our mutually beneficial cooperation to unprecedented heights." India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaffirmed his government's commitment to strengthening the MSME sector, calling it a key driver of economic growth. The Prime Minister launched 2 new missions to further boost manufacturing and exports. He said that the government's focus is on better technology and higher quality products. The Prime Minister made these remarks on Tuesday, addressing the post-budget webinar on MSMEs as an engine of growth.
आज 14 सेक्टर्स को हमारी PLI स्कीम का फायदा मिल रहा है। इस योजना के तहत 750 से ज्यादा यूनिट्स को मंजूरी दी गई है। इससे 1.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा का इन्वेस्टमेंट आया है। 13 लाख करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा का प्रोडक्शन हुआ है और 5 लाख करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा का एक्सपोर्ट हुआ है। ये दिखाता है कि अगर हमारे एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, अगर उनको अवसर मिले तो वो हर नए क्षेत्रों में भी आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। मैन्युफैक्चरिंग और एक्सपोर्ट को बढ़ावा देने के लिए हमने 2 मिशन शुरू करने का फैसला किया है। हम बेहतर टेक्नोलॉजी और क्वालिटी प्रोडक्ट्स पर फोकस कर रहे हैं और लागत कम करने के लिए स्किलिंग पर जोर दे रहे हैं। मैं चाहूंगा कि यहां मौजूद सभी स्टेक होल्डर्स ऐसे नए प्रोडक्ट्स की पहचान करें जिनकी वर्ल्ड में डिमांड है, जिनकी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हम कर सकते हैं।
Prime Minister Modi highlighted that India is being seen as a major growth center today amid a phase of political uncertainty.
आज दुनिया राजनीतिक अनिश्चितता के दौर से गुजर रही है। पूरी दुनिया भारत को एक ग्रोथ सेंटर के तौर पर देख रही है। कोविड संकट के दौरान जब ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी में मंदी आई तब भारत ने ग्लोबल ग्रोथ को रफ्तार दी। ये ऐसे ही नहीं हो गया। हमने आत्मनिर्भर भारत के विजन को आगे बढ़ाया और रिफॉर्म्स की अपनी गति को और तेज किया। हमारे प्रयासों से इकोनॉमी पर कोविड का प्रभाव कम हुआ। इससे भारत को तेज गति से बढ़ने वाली अर्थव्यवस्था बनाने में मदद मिली।
And still to come here on DD India News Hour, India are taking on Australia in the first semi-final of the Champions Trophy in Dubai. The English cricket legend James Anderson is registered for the 100 draft.
issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. The Union Environment Minister, the Minister for Forests and Climate Change, Bhupendra Yadav, has delivered an address on the second day of the 3-day long Circular Economy Forum in Asia and the Pacific. Currently, it's going on in Jaipur. So speaking at this event, the minister said that there is an opportunity for India to convert the large amounts of waste to generate reusable solutions for sustainable existence.
We are united by the theme of this conference, realizing circular societies toward achieving sustainable development goals and carbon neutrality in Asia and the Pacific. The driver for adopting circular economy isn't scarcity, it's opportunity. Waste to wealth. We are in the regime of waste to wealth. The circular economy may be about to drive one of the biggest transformation in business since the Industrial Revolution 250 years ago.
In Sri Lanka, the Government Medical Officers Association has warned of a nationwide strike unless the government restores doctors' holiday allowances to previous levels. The GMOA Secretary, Dr. Prabhat Sugatadasa, said that the budgetary cuts introduced in 2025 budget were unacceptable, demanding immediate corrective measures. He warned that if the government did not respond positively, doctors would launch a strike tomorrow. In response, the Health Minister, Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa, has urged the doctors to refrain from unreasonable trade union actions that could disrupt public services, emphasizing that the government is open to discussions. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get you the sports news. And the Australian captain, Steve Smith, has won the toss. He's opted to bat first against Rohit Sharma's India. This is the semi-final of the ICC Champions Trophy 2025 going on in Dubai. Australia have brought in Tanveer Sangha and Cooper Connolly in their playing 11, while India remain unchanged. Even though the men in blue have beaten the Aussies in the 2024 T20 World Cup that ultimately led to their elimination, this will be their first meeting in a 50-over game since that fateful day in Ahmedabad. Australia, in fact, are without a lot of their stars from the ODI World Cup campaign, with Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, Mitch Marsh, Josh Hazelwood and Marcus Stoinis all unavailable due to various reasons. And Narayan is joining me now live from the newsroom. Narayan, you know, it looks like I'm looking at the score, 5 for 1 in 3.2 overs. It looks like India started well. But India needs to set the record straight, isn't it? This is a revenge match.
Definitely, Mark, as you said, it's a revenge match, grudge match. And when the last time they met in a ODI knockout was the 2023 World Cup final, where India lost the match. And throughout the tournament, India played a fantastic and impeccable cricket, but in the final they lost to Australia. But this time around, after that match, a lot has been changed for both the teams. This is a different India and this is a different Australia. As you mentioned, that it's we can say that in terms of bowling front, it's a second string Australian team. Their frontline bowlers is not there. And also Marcus Stoinis, who has been retired from the cricket, he is also not there. And so it's difficult for them to choose their playing 11 today. They bought their Cooper Connolly and also they bought Tanveer Sangha for this match. So, but there is a difference of the quality between the two teams. Talking about this pitch, it favors the spin. We know that
Connolly is already out.
Matches at the Bhuman.
Connolly
he's
is
already
out for
out,
duck,
but
yes.
he's all. But thing is that also they can use him as a bowler also. In that sense, you take a look that there are the 10 quality overs of Adam Zampa for Australia and 40 quality overs of the Indian team. So there is a huge gulf between the quality of the pace attack between the two team mark. So all in all, India has an upper hand, and we know that this Indian cricket team, the kind of cricket they played right from the match one against Bangladesh, after that Pakistan, in both the matches they chased the target, and their final test was against the New Zealand, and New Zealand was one of the most balanced side of this tournament, and we know that batting first, it was a challenge for the India too, because they were winning the matches while chasing. But today also we can say that India, the kind of start that got, a swing was there for the initial period of the time, there will be sting, but as the match will progress, definitely it's going to be tough for the Australian team, but hopefully
what's also going for India is that Kohli has hit a century in this tournament, but the point is that is his form for the long term?
We know that Kohli is a big match player. Whenever India needed his temperament, his class, his A game, definitely he was always there. And in the match against Pakistan, we know that it was a very, we can say, it came at the right time and the crucial time for the India. And we know that the kind of player Kohli is, he's a modern day great, and he know that when to play. And we saw his struggles against the leg spinner and the wrist spinners in the past. But we know that the way he's playing right now, he can overcome all those challenges because he knows well how to tackle all the situation. And definitely Kohli, we know that he has the quality, and definitely his form is also important for the Indian team. He has a century in this tournament against his name, and as the tournament, we know that it's at the right time, it's a semi-final, and hoping that his form is important for the India.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Narayan Singh, for joining us and putting that into perspective. Legendary former England fast bowler James Anderson is aiming to play in the 100 for the first time after entering the draft for this year's tournament. The 42-year-old had retired from Test cricket last year and has signed to play the county cricket for Lancashire. This is in the coming season. England's all-time leading wicket taker he is, and he has now made himself available for the 100 or the 100 as it's called, and it will be he's going to be part of the draft on the 12th of March. Anderson has entered the auction for this year's Indian Premier League as well, but he was unsold. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, and for those of you on the go, you can get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. It's available in both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.